States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Moines County Board of Supervisors meeting, August 19th, 2025. Is there any changes to the agenda? I have none. Okay, meet with department head and elected officials. Colin George, IT.
Good morning. Nothing new to report to the board, just keep busy like always.
I hear you're going to make presentations at ISAC for the
Yeah, we're
state.
gonna go up there on Thursday, so
Good.
should be good.
Let Tom teach him a little bit, will you?
I'll try.
Okay.
So not real bad.
Thanks, Colin.
Yep.
Rodney, how's the maintenance department?
Good morning, doing well. Kind of thankful for a little bit of the break of some of this hot weather we've been having. But, it's hard on equipment and people both, but everything's been going well. Nothing new to report.
Okay, thank you, Rodney. Janelle, Treasurer's office.
Good morning. I would like to report that the taxes are certified and were mailed out on Friday afternoon, and big thanks to Rodney for loading the truck up and hauling all those down to the post office for me, so.
Those are half of them blowing around the street.
They were tucked in there tight. I have proof, he took pictures, they made it.
Okay.
So no, we're busy.
Okay, thank you. Krista, how's the public health?
Good morning. We're keeping busy with back to school immunization clinics, but other than that, don't have anything to report.
Okay, I got your email. We're gonna have a meeting Thursday.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Shannon,
Hi,
how's emergency management?
it's been pretty good. We did have that one little storm at the south part of the county last night. The only thing I wanted to touch on was the National Weather Service was asking if we had any damages. I didn't see any, I didn't get any reports of any, but if you did, you can reach out to the National Weather Service. Like I said, they were looking for some damage assessment from that area, and I haven't seen anything, but maybe there's some somewhere.
Well, I heard the lady sitting next to you lost her pool things.
I
I thought I was gonna lose the kitchen window there for a minute.
I heard,
It
yeah,
got really hard.
but like I said, I didn't get any reports or I didn't see anything on my way up here, so. But if you did, reach out to the National Weather Service.
Okay, thank you. Angie, how's the safety department?
Good morning, we're keeping busy. I will say that we do have an animal control hearing that will be coming up in the next 30 days.
Okay.
So just kind of a heads up on that. We're getting all the documents together and everything pulled together for that, so.
Okay, thank you. Jared Laster, regional planning.
Morning. Land use been pretty busy as usual this past week, but apart from agenda item and one minor subdivision now out for review, I don't have anything else to report.
Okay, thank you. Trent, how's the attorney's office?
Again, we're busy as usual, but no trials this week, which is a nice change of pace at this point. But other than that, nothing significant to report.
Thank you. Chris Lee, conservation.
We're busy, it's not a whole lot going on, just by way of report. It looks like, for some reason, they must have got a bunch of rain up north. The river's about to jump up a couple feet. We were just loading up, getting ready to put docks out. We checked the river stage forecast, and it's on a vertical rise, so we're gonna hold off putting the docks out. I know some folks are not gonna be super thrilled about that, but we can't go putting those out, and then we're gonna be short-staffed this week and through the weekend, so if that river comes flying up, we gotta pull that back out, we won't have the staff to do it. So it is.
Okay, thank you. Lisa, do you have anything to add for the attorney's office?
Nope.
Sure. Sheriff Glendenning, how's everything at the sheriff's office?
Good. We have plenty going on. Town and Country Days this weekend in Mediapolis, and then I believe it's the Rotary Touch a Truck event out at the mall on Saturday. So we'll be at both locations. And then our jail this morning was at 72 adults, no juveniles, and no out of county still.
That's good.
Yeah, doing well.
Thank you. Brian Carter, secondary roads.
Good morning. Plenty of stuff moving along. I do want to mention a couple things that are more DOT related up in the Mediapolis area. I should be getting an update this morning, possibly even while we're sitting here, but tentatively they're planning on opening Mediapolis Road Friday. But then at the same time, they will flip around and close 235th, which is what people call the school loop, but just north of Mediapolis, where that paved road runs east off of 61 and kind of the back way into Mediapolis School. They'll be closing that to start tearing pavement out at that location. They will, at some point moving forward, switch traffic over to 2 of the new lanes and kind of use the bypass for traffic to go around while they're doing other work. But they have some other issues going on with some signage and some lighting that they have to get done before they can open that up. So there'll be another transition period, but if things stay as they had currently planned, and we'll put out a press release just to try to help people realize, but Mediapolis Road will be opening, and 235th will be closing. And that 235th closure, I'm guessing, will be at least a month and a half. So that'll take it into harvest. But that's what's going on there, and that closure depends on the bypass getting opened so that they can do the whole amount of work right there to get that open back up. So just a couple things related up there. And then I would mention the public health plat that we have had for a little bit, went through a city approval process for the subdivision. So that is done and taken care of. I sent an email to the board and to Trent this morning. I think it's now in Trent's hands. I think all somebody has to do is pick it up from City Hall and Trent can run with it as far as, it needs to be recorded, but I think there's some documents that need to be done with it to be able to record it. And then of course, Trent can work on the new deed that would be created for you guys to go through your sealed bid process. So we're not there as far as being able to sell that off, but we are far closer than we've been, and in case Trent's been bored, this will give him something else to work on. So
I don't think he's been too bored.
I didn't think so,
This went far.
but it's well over my head now. So I just wanted to mention that we've made good headway finally.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Did I miss anybody?
Yeah, let me, I need to respond to something. I need to respond to something I heard on the radio yesterday morning. The radio host was interviewing Joe Myers, the gentleman that runs Transitions DMC. Mr. Myers was on the radio to promote his plan to establish a homeless shelter for children here in Burlington and discuss fundraising for the project. Mr. Myers said he was working with the Board of Supervisors to take over the old Des Moines County Health Center. I'm aware that Mr. Myers has walked through the building, as have other interested parties. Mr. Myers called me once or twice over the last 3 or 4 months about his desire to use that building. I told him the board hadn't decided what we were going to do with the building and we're waiting until the plat was completed, which is apparently done now, and we received final approval before we made that decision. I told him he's more than welcome to present his ideas to the board, that we were willing to talk to anybody. But Mr. Myers has never appeared before this board, either at a formal meeting or work session. The auditor tells me he's never requested to be put on the agenda, and this board has never discussed any proposals, much less agreed on any particular disposition of that property. I am particularly unhappy that Mr. Myers is fundraising using the false claim of having an endorsement from this Board of Supervisors, an endorsement he has never received. I just want to get that on the record. So,
Thank you. That surprised me. I didn't know anything about that.
it was certainly a surprise to me. That's all I have.
Okay. That leaves us. Are there any changes to the tentative agenda?
I have none.
I have none. Okay. That's correspondence. I have none.
I had none.
Okay, correspondence?
No.
Okay, thank you. We shall move on to discussion and vote. We have accounts payable claims in the amount of $580,385.57.
Motion.
Shane, you on
Shake, oh, I didn't
He
see
just
his picture.
He said motion to approve.
Oh, second.
there? Cheryl?
Shane McCampbell, Tom Broker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yeah. I didn't hear him either. So we have payroll reimbursement claim in amount of $442,000, or no, wait, back on, we're talking pennies when I'm talking that. $442.46.
Motion to approve.
Cheryl?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell, Jim Carrey.
Yes. We have the second reading of the amendment to the zoning ordinance number 34.
Can I ask, Lisa, we can, if we make one approval, or one motion, we can eliminate the third reading on this, right? Okay, okay. I would
You have to open the
waive
public
it.
hearing.
Yeah.
It doesn't say public, okay, we need to open a public hearing.
Yep.
Motion to open a public hearing. Second.
Cheryl?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Anybody have anything to say about this ordinance for the amendment?
I haven't received any other comments about it.
We have received anything in the,
Not that I'm aware of.
sure we're of.
Motion to close the public hearing. Second.
Cheryl?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes.
I would move to approve zoning ordinance number 34 and to waive the third reading. Second.
Cheryl?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. We got papers signed here. Okay, the funding for the consultant, conduct preliminary assessments for the future Highway 61 Roosevelt corridor reconstruction and the efforts with other local entities.
So I put this back on the agenda because I had spoken to Shane at the end of the week. I kind of gave him the same summary I gave to you. He was good with it being on the agenda, but he also thought he might be feeling good enough to be here. So if he's aware of it, I'm not going to repeat everything I said last week, unless somebody really wants to hear it. So if Shane would rather table it until he's in person, I totally understand that. Or if you guys wanna discuss it and make a decision, I don't know that it's truly a discussion and vote type item as much as just letting you guys have a chance to discuss it. So I'll defer to.
I'm satisfied with what PC said, so we don't have to table anything, we can keep moving.
I mean, did you want to table it or I missed it?
What's that?
Did you move to table it, Shane? I couldn't.
No, he said he didn't need to table anything,
Oh, okay, I misunderstood.
but we got the money in economic development to help out on this, and it's gonna help the citizens of Des Moines County.
I would make a motion to approve a contribution up to $10,000.
I'll second that.
Cheryl?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes.
Thank you, I'll get that passed on and we'll figure the rest of the details out.
Annual liquor license for the Country Treasures LLC. Sheriff Glendale, do you have any problems with this?
No issues, actually.
Everything seems to be in order with everything, so.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Move to approve.
Second.
Cheryl?
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Now we have the presentation of the Conservation Annual Report.
Well, Brian gets a half day, so I promise to only keep this maybe 3 hours. So. But here's these two. Every year we publish an annual report. Just kind of summarizes our big highlights for the year, summarizes our budget, and just some of the things that have happened. For us this last year, the big thing that we're excited about is the improvements that we did at Stars Cave. So carrying on from the work we were doing up at Big Hollow last year with all that grant funded stuff, we carried that ADA accessibility onto the Nature Center and put in some new sidewalks there. We got grants for that through the Murray Foundation and through some other donations. And so we now have paved parking with a new paved sidewalk all the way to the Nature Center, and then pavement that goes from that parking from the Nature Center and then ties into the quarter-mile paved trail that has been there for years and years and years. So that's kind of one of those things that's been a long time coming. We wanted to do it for quite a while, and it just carries on this effort that we've done. Like putting the sidewalks up the beach, which is, as Jim knows, was a long time coming. I know you were on it for a long time, trying to get that done. We managed to get that done last year at Big Hollow, and then just carried that momentum on to some of the other stuff we did up there, and then carried it on down to the Nature Center. Made some changes to our software management. We implemented a new software system called RepDesk, so that's now handling all of our event registration, all of our shooting range memberships. Changed some fee structures on both camp fees and shooting range. And then our foundation, even though it's not really our event, the foundation hosted the inaugural River Needs event out here on the riverfront to raise money for the foundation, which indirectly sometimes supports us. So summary there, the staff updates. And then we got some graphs there. We get it on the page 4. Camping numbers were up pretty significantly. We went from 4,832 people camping last year to 5,512 this year. So that's a nice bump. I don't know where to attribute that to the new campsites we built or changes in the economy. I don't know, it's hard to say. Somebody could figure that out. They'd probably make a whole bunch of money. Obviously, most of our camping is at Big Hollow, full 80%, but then we get 11.5% of our campers out of Fourth Pumping Station and 8.5% out of Sycamore Loop down there at Welter Recreation Area. Shooting range memberships have largely leveled out for about the past 4 years. We were at 683 existing range memberships for this last year. That's a little bit down from the year before, but on par with kind of the years prior to that, 2 years prior to that. So that's kind of leveled out. We saw a little bit of a decline from, about fiscal year 18 on down through 22. I don't know if to attribute that to prices of ammunition or the fact that we've got an indoor shooting range here, but either way, it looks like that's leveling out a little bit, so that's good. And then we got some summaries on our land stewardship. Last year, we basically quit doing private lands work just because we didn't have the staff resources to go out and do plantings for folks and still stay on top of the stuff that we wanted to do. And so our numbers, if you look at past annual reports, our acre numbers are probably down a little bit, but that's largely because we're focused mostly on just the lands that we have and maintain with the staff resources that we have. And then environmental education, we were down a little bit from previous years as far as number of programs and number of people, but we went several months with the naturalist transition, and so we were down staffed a little bit there, and that was actually through kind of the peak field trip season. But nevertheless, we still had about 16,449 folks come through the Nature Center, and 4,607 participants across 203 programs in the course of the fiscal year. So considering we have 2.5 people at the Nature Center, that's doing a lot of programs and reaching a lot of people. And then highlighting our volunteers that we recognized last year with the different volunteer awards that we do, that's on page 10, and then summary of our budget, which you've all seen, and then that's that. So, happy to answer any questions anybody's got about our annual report. This is published online. If you go to our website, dmcconservation.com, click on About Us, it's right there. You scroll down, you can see this and a whole bunch of past year's annual reports and kind of see how those trend.
Thanks, Chris.
You bet.
Personnel actions. We have one here for local health. It's it's for Andrea Holmes. She's a public health nurse. 8 hours unpaid on 8/13/2025.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Sure.
Shane McCampbell,
Aye.
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. We have 4 for conservation. We'll do all 4 of these at once. The first one is for Grant Swanson, seasonal summer intern in the summer. Final termination date is 8/20/25. The next one is for Aaron Keyhole, grant funded position, end of term. Final rate of pay was $20. His last day was 8/14/2025. The next one is Trevor Galinsky, seasonal naturalist. Final termination is 8/15/2025. And the last one was Kendall Coulter, seasonal intern in the summer. Last date working 8/19/2025.
Motion to approve all 4.
Second.
Sure.
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Now, we have one for the correctional center, which is Rayanne Henderson, full-time correctional officer. Anniversary, 6-month step increase from $50,072.77 to $51,364.11.
Motion
Motion approved.
Second.
Cheryl?
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Now we have reports, we have on file, we have the clerk's report for fees collected in July of 2025, the sheriff's report for fees collected in July of 2025. These will be on file in the auditor's office for reviewing of your own discretion. Okay, now we have the minutes for the regular meeting on August the 12th, 2025.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Cheryl?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Okay, is there any other business?
I have none.
I have none.
Have none.
Future agenda items?
We'll have to have well, Trent's gonna check and see what needs to be done to that plat before it comes to the board and we set up a work session or something for that.
Okay. Committee reports.
I attended a meeting of Greater Burlington. And apparently the Department of Defense has awarded one of the contracts out at the Army ammunition plant. The MSN Group North America Incorporated of St. Petersburg, Florida, was awarded a fixed price with economic price adjustment contract to design, build, and commission a load, assemble, and pack facility at the Iowa Army ammunition plant for $635,200,000. Work will be performed in Middletown, Iowa, with an estimated completion date of August 10th, 2029. FYI.
That's a lot of money.
Did they have an estimate on number of people that's gonna bring in?
No, this apparently just came from a Department of Defense website, just, saying this contract has been awarded. Apparently it was ordered August 15th.
By reason that. We were anticipating, if it's gonna be like what they were talking before, and if they're gonna be using that south entrance, some pretty significant impacts on our campground down there.
Okay, and they were talking several projects, so I don't know which one this would be or where it would be located.
Well, it sounds like that's designed.
Well, it's the whole, looks good, it's design, build, and commission.
Yeah, that doesn't mean it actually includes construction though. Could be just the planning for it. I mean, that's,
By the way, it's just
not that much money in the world of a $2 billion project. That's the only reason
No, and I agree, but I think there were 3 or 4 different
Yeah.
facilities, so I don't know. It just says design, build, and commission.
We'll find out more.
And I don't know what a load, assemble, and pack facility is.
Yeah, I don't either.
Confident we'll find out.
Yeah, we will. Probably after the fact.
Anybody want to bet on whether it's done August 10th, 2029?
Or whether that's the final cost.
I'm giving odds.
I'll take the over.
I attended a press meeting.
Oh, she's so weird.
Everything's going real smooth there. Everybody's paid their dues for next year. And with our pump truck, they had a little problem with it. They hauled it up to Kenworth Kenworth fixed it, they got 50 miles away and went, same thing happened again. So they had to have it towed. And the towing's not cheap on one of them. They found out is what it is the, Brian might be interested in this, it's all the DEF modules on there.
Shocking.
Oh, the,
Yeah,
All the emission crap that
Emission
they've
stuff,
added over the years, that complete, this is the first thing that goes bad on trucks.
so, but now I guess you can have them, since last year, they made a rule where you can take them off the older trucks.
Yeah, it was illegal and now they've loosened it up, so. But it's not cheap to do that either, to get them,
No.
I think it's well derated, but it's not cheap either.
Anyway, we're all one way with it.
good to know.
Okay. Moving on to public input. If anybody from Public Online wants to call in at 319-753-8203 extension 4 or email board@dmcounty.com. That's board@dmcounty.com. We'll give you 2 minutes to do that. And meanwhile, anybody in the audience have anything to say?
Allison Moore. Brian, I'm wondering, do you have an update on 260th Street?
I just asked for an update last week and we were supposed to get something more today. But from what I've heard, I wouldn't hold your breath, but I do not have a good update.
It'll be a long 2 minutes.
I think we should change meeting times to like 6 a.m. Make my life easier.
What time?
About 6.
You say 6 a.m.?
Yeah.
You're up for it?
Oh, yeah. Earlier the better. Seriously.
I have to tiptoe out of the bedroom not to wake my wife up.
I would have a 6-year-old in tow, probably don't want that.
I don't
She's
have
pretty
those
chatty.
issues anymore. Thank God.
Wow.
Okay, 7.
I'm not certain taking them kids to school yet.
That's right. Monday's the day.
Took a long walk from the. Yeah.
You probably walked to school uphill both ways, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
In the snow.
No shoes
In
on.
the snow, and there's no hills though,
No.
but I had a creek to play in on the way.
There you go. You turned out all right.
Okay, the 2 minutes are up, so we're going to have a work session here in about 5 minutes. We're gonna take a break. We're gonna have a work session on the solar farm. So, with an eye, we're out of here.
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, is it?
Okay, everybody, we're here for a work session on our wind farm. We're going to turn this over to Zach to start with and Jared.
Yeah, pointer.
And if anybody wants to speak, when you speak, please give your name for the record, because this is all being recorded. Appreciate that.
Alright, Zach James, Southeast Iowa Regional Planning Commission. Point of clarification, one of the ordinances for wind, solar, and battery systems, just to clarify, not just wind. We did meet last week, Jared, Trent, and I, to go over some of these things, so, today, maybe some people might not be as excited about it. We're gonna focus on the siting design standards for solar and battery storage. We still have some things we wanna go over on the wind, and then also on the permitting before we really dive into that. So, not that anybody can't make comments about things in those sections as well at some point if they wanted to, but that's where we're gonna focus. I don't think, hold on. I may pull up a different version here, but, cause my copy, I printed copies in black and white, so I can't see all the changes on here very well. Not a ton of new changes. Oh yeah, there we go.
Which page are you starting on?
It would be page 11. And so just to clarify, yeah, the stuff that's in yellow was not in the original ordinance, but stuff we added when we did the Lee County ordinance, and then stuff in red would be basically new, completely new or modified based on stuff we've heard from you guys. So not a ton of changes here. I'll just start, I guess, from the beginning. When we went through this with Trent last week, I don't think we had a ton of comments, and I guess you can jump in when you want to. But on page 11, 1B, we added the statement there, the requirements in this section shall apply only to CSS at the time of construction, shall not apply if any new building infrastructure or voluntary place close proximity after it is assumed operation. So that, you'll see that in every section too, that's been added. That's basically saying this only applies to the time that the permit comes in. So if something new is built after the fact, you know, those aren't necessarily subject to setback requirements because they weren't there at the time the permit came in. So that's a blanket statement that's been added across the board. I will note, Tom, because you mentioned this to me a couple times, 1C, that's already in there, but I know you brought this up, the statement, the requirements in this section may be waived if written permission for a shorter distance has been obtained from one or more individual property owners, and the waiver shall apply only to those specific properties. Again, that'll be in the siting standards, whether it's wind, solar, battery storage, but I know that's something that you mentioned to me, and I just wanted to touch on that it is in there, because you brought it up. So that is in there, that applies to all. So basically that gives the property owner the ability to waive any requirements, whether it's a setback or one of the other requirements. It's in there if they had written permission to do so. What's that?
I said, I'm checking if you were paying attention.
Sometimes. Jared, I might turn to you on this one on the setback table, the change in cemeteries, because I think that was a discussion from Lee County that I may not have been privy to, but.
I think that was just being consistent with some of those other uses in that table. It seemed a little high for how that was listed, so I think it was kind of similar to the other ones as well, but it would still be 150 feet, similar to substations or other structures on non-participating property. So apart from that, the setback table for the solar is proposed to remain the same as previously.
So I obviously we have the boundary from public conservation areas still at 300 feet. And what you're proposing is having it go back from cemeteries from 300 to down to 150.
In Lee County, there was some concern about defining what a cemetery constituted in a rural area that would apply to private burials that over the past 200 years, if there's just concerns of whether that was opening up to possible issues and with being able to know exactly where all these burials are located. So we did add in the definition section there.
Yeah, we can add a definition, and we have the cemetery commission that we work with already, so I mean.
That's the Pioneer Cemetery Commission. I don't know
Yeah.
that they have any jurisdiction over some of those cemeteries.
So I mean, but 300, because part of what we're concerned with the solar is reflection, right?
And then just with being close to non-participating dwellings and conservation areas because there's the wildlife aspect there. There's not as much research into the topic of solar with regards to the wildlife impact, but there is some that does indicate that there should be some caution exercised there and how close those would be. So we consistently with wind, we have the conservation area using the same setback as occupied dwellings on a non-participating property, just whatever it is for that particular, whether it be solar or wind.
What do you guys think?
If you think it should stay 300, I guess it does.
That's fine.
I think it's a deal.
Melanie Patton, a couple questions about the setbacks on, so we're giving a public conservation area 300 feet and possibly, are you saying you would switch the cemeteries back to 300 feet?
Potentially.
Okay, so, but yet we have a boundary line of a non-participating property at 75 feet. And then up under 1B or B1B, so because so far the property line is much closer, you don't have the same rights. So if I decide, like for instance, right now I'm building a shop on my property, but if there was already a solar array near my property and I decided to build a shop, then I wouldn't have the same setbacks. Or I decided to build a gazebo, or I decided to build an accessory dwelling unit, those kinds of things. So you're basically saying that the property owner of the solar array has, as long as they're there first, then that limits me as to what I can do on my property later.
I don't think necessarily that's true for the fact, because we are not, the only thing is a setback here. Not being zoning, if you want to build close to that would be up to you on your own property.
But then I won't be afforded the same setback from the solar array. So you're basically saying that if I have the building now, I'm gonna have that opportunity to have that setback. But if I build something later, then that's limiting me on my property as a non-participating property owner. So that, for some reason, that doesn't make sense to me as a non-participating property owner, no matter if it's wind, solar, battery, whatever it is. Or if I'm a cemetery versus a non-participating property, so you're giving a cemetery a further setback than you are a non-participating property. Or a conservation area has a bigger setback.
I don't, I'm not an attorney, but I don't know how you write, potential use of property is not particularly
You do that
tangible.
Oops, sorry.
I'm just saying, I don't know that a potential use of a property, there's always a potential use, but
then you
it's
use
quite the tangible, doesn't bring, there's not much tangible weight to it.
There is by using a property line versus a dwelling or a building.
We could do that.
Right.
But I understand it can be done. If it needs to be from a cemetery, but
I think it's referred to
a
in.
tangible or a potential use of a property, that said, well, if you do this, I might want to build something on there in a year or 2 years or 5 years.
I
Or
think
maybe
the
not.
term is trespass zoning, so basically you're taking away
Well, I don't,
my right.
I've heard that term and the definition, but, that's,
What's your take on it, Trent?
So, I mean, we can do a straight property line setback, and that's what I proposed early on in this, it is, instead of trying to use this convoluted chart, it makes the most sense to have participating property, non-participating property, and then just do that. And it's much easier, it's much cleaner to do it that way. And so if we wanted to say 300 feet from non-participating property, and then we get rid of all of this, if it's somebody's hanging upside down by their toes, or if we got acrobats or whatever, I don't think it matters. It's, it is, and Tom's absolutely right when he says it's a question of property rights. And so it's how close can something be to where we give property owner A the maximum amount of property rights they can have before their property rights spill into and they're taking away from property owner B, and vice versa. And where is that? And wherever that is a set number. And I don't think it matters necessarily, and again, to what you're saying, Tom, you're right, it doesn't matter necessarily what one person's usage of that property is, it's where is one person going into the next person's property, and that's what the setback should be for. And that's easy, that's just
Because
easy.
my property rights don't start at the edge of my house, they start at the edge of my property line. So if you're not using a setback from my property line, you're using my house that's existing right now, but if I decide to build something later, then it's encroaching on that property right.
there's a number of property rights involved here. And it might not make a difference on this particular setback. But that's, I can see where it's used to just, ban or prohibit, the use of any property because it takes so much room. And I have no problem with that 300 feet. But, the property lines.
And I think too, when you, if I
Rose,
may,
you got something?
Yeah, Rose Fisher. It shouldn't matter if I have a potential use for my property. It's still my property. And I acquired that property with the mindset that I would be able to use my property however I wanted in the future. So if you make the setback from my dwelling, you're basically letting somebody else have the right to use my land between my dwelling and my fence without my consent. So that's taking away my property rights.
What would keep, if on these setbacks, we got two lawyers here. Okay, I've got my property right here, and over here is the setback from my property line. And these setbacks are what we're saying we have to take from the property. And that setback is, let's say, 300 foot for this particular thing we're talking about. So we go to the 300 foot back there. Well, if I want to build a house here, that's not restricting me on my property, is it? Not at all. I could still build my house right here on my property line if I wanted to.
So that ordinance, so this ordinance, so say, I think what I understand your question to be is, if say, somebody puts, we're talking about a solar panel here. If somebody puts a solar panel 300 foot from, say, property owner A puts a solar panel 300 foot from property owner B's property line, and property owner B wants to come up and build a home closer to their property line, or if somehow they're all within 300, they're all within 300 foot of each other somehow, would anything within this ordinance proposed prevent somebody from building? And the answer to that, from a legal construct as far as this ordinance, would be no. Then we run into the practical reality of, and this is an answer I don't know directly, because it becomes a practical reality of, can that be insured? If it can't be insured, can it be financed? So then you get into these kind of secondary questions. But as a practical matter, the raw answer to your question is, this does not restrict the building or the usage of anybody else's land directly. Now, but it does have, as far as the light coming into what, if we have reflections from a solar panel that then impedes and stops somebody from being able to use their land, or it shines in somebody's eyes, and their kids go outside to play and they get blinded or something, that causes problems, and that's an invasion into their property. But it doesn't. This ordinance in and of itself does not stop somebody from any use in a non-participating property.
Hey, that's what I want to know, that's what I would know. That clears my mind up for me. Allison Moore.
Yep, Allison Moore. So can someone explain to me then B1B, who is that protecting? People who don't have solar panels, or people who may have solar panels?
Well, no, you're right, and I even put down in my notes next to it that we have to have a timeline then built into the permitting. So when you're saying from the time a permit is submitted, and it's not uncommon when you look at some of these ordinances that they might give a developer, say, 1 year from the date of submission through approval. And if it's not approved within that 1 year, then they have to start over. So, and that's just a for instance, right? I don't know exactly what we have in ours, and we haven't done permitting yet in this process. But you're right when you say that B1B, that section specifically protects a developer that once they file for a permit from that point, they don't have people building structures that then would limit placements.
And I think the purpose of an ordinance should be to protect the parcel owners, or, property owners, not the company. Thank you.
Did you have something, Jerry?
Well, because technically, because we didn't have that provision in there previously, this same topic had been raised in Lee County, questioning about whether it's retroactive on the private property owner, and so technically, this specific language, I've not seen that in most other ordinances, because it's basically assumed that is the case, because the purpose statement of the ordinance says that it's regulating wind and or solar farms, that it would be only relevant to that particular infrastructure and not to any other private development around it. So really this is just included in the ordinance as a way of making sure that everyone is clear that is the case. It doesn't necessarily need to be said, but because if there's ever any question about that, it's just making sure that it's specifically stated in there for the sake of everyone involved, that technically if you want to build something closer than that in the future, then this permitting process has no implication on that whatsoever. It's up to you if you feel comfortable building closer to it or not. It's not regulated by the county in any way if you want to build a house after there's already a solar or a wind farm in operation there.
Melanie Patton again. So basically what you're saying is if the house is already existing, you're gonna get a bigger setback. If you build a house after a solar array, for instance, is built, then you're gonna have, if you wanna put your house in the same spot, you're gonna have or closer maybe to your property line, then you're gonna have a lesser setback.
Ultimately, yes.
Depends on where you wanna build it, but yeah, potentially.
So because there's a solar array next to you, you're going to have to be closer in the place you choose to build
Well,
your
it
house.
depends on the location of the solar.
Right,
The
but
solar
if-
panels, so you can build on the other side of your property, or you can build it closer to
Right,
your property.
but so that's
up to
basically
that person.
limiting the person's property because you're going,
No,
you're not
they-
going
they
from a
ultimately have
property
the
line.
choice to put that wherever they want.
right, but you're also gonna be closer to something that's already there. So
But
if you have a
that's their
setback
pers-
from a
that's
property
That's
line.
their personal decision.
That's just a veto over what somebody else wants to do with their property. The way, to go out in the ether a little bit, the way, I look at this is that, this board swore an oath to uphold the Constitution. That's the only thing it asks us to do. Now, it understands that we're concerned and need to be concerned and take care of the safety and health of Des Moines County residents and their property, and I get that. So if we're gonna have an installation, I wanna make damn sure it's far enough away from somebody's house that they or their families are not at risk. I want the rest of their property to be covered by insurance, so the developer, if there's something. But you can't, there is no end to that. Once you say, well, then I can't do this or I can't do that, nothing gets built, and the people that are trying to employ their property for illegal use, we say, we can't do that, you can't do that because your neighbors don't want you to. I don't think private property rights are subject to a referendum. It's two hands, go ahead.
Allison Moore. So a property line is a property line. Why do you want to muddy the waters with dwellings, buildings? Like, just keep it straight and simple. Property line. You have a focus on property rights. Keep it property line.
When I first got the list of requests from Des Moines County, no, and I don't have any, none of this is because I disagree with you or whatever, but most of those look to me like they were designed just to essentially prohibit any sort of development of a kind they don't want. That's where these come from.
So
If you go from, if you gotta be a mile from each property line, there are many places in Des Moines County where you would be a mile from each property line.
So if you think some of those setbacks are too much, let's work with that, but we still need to focus on property lines for each property owner.
I'm saying, your residence is a different standard. That's where you and your family are.
Do you remember
if
when
there's-
Brad Coates said that he had children that may want to build on his property? They
Well,
should not have to be
That's
limited.
a future use
Yes,
versus a
for
potential
property that
use
they purchased, that they pay taxes
versus
on.
an
They pay
existing
taxes
proposal.
on that property, they should have the right to do whatever they want to do on that
Everybody pays taxes on their
property.
parcel. I'm just saying how I'm looking at it. Your residence is, requires a different level of care. It would require a different setback than the rest of your property or whatever would be within that, diameter that, needs to be insured, but it's a different standard. It's a
So
different
my
standard
insurance
to me.
rates might go up because I'm too close to the solar array that's
The
next.
the developer is gonna have property, general liability coverage for any, damage it would do to anybody else's property.
But if I choose to build something, say that's closer than 200 feet, 1B is basically saying, well, too bad, you made that choice. So are you saying that company.
I'll be real honest with you, I'm not an insurance agent or a lawyer, so I don't know how they sort that out if you put something there later.
You haven't spoke yet.
Charles Tonkinson, South Yarmouth. We're talking about setbacks, but we're not talking about, I want to get ahead a little bit. I don't know how we can talk about setbacks without talking about heights. We're talking about, on the next page under C, a 15-foot height restriction. Now, if we don't use the property line, then I could have some property. How do you like it if I come to your house and put up a 15-foot wall? Some of these things are a quarter mile long. So you want to just go 300 feet back and I got a nice 15-foot wall. We have to talk about these together. You're blocking out these people's right to view. And the property line is the only way I see that we get some kind of protection as a citizen of Des Moines County. That's all I got.
Yes.
Rose Fisher. So if the purpose of the ordinance is to protect the health and safety and welfare of the resident, you're saying I can be safe if I'm in my house that is already there, but if I'm working in my shop that's closer to my property line, then I don't have a right to safety anymore?
That's not what you said.
But we're getting into all sorts of opinions here. I've told you
It's not
mine.
an opinion, Tom.
It isn't, I'm just saying, it's a different standard. Your home, you can ask the sheriff. If I go into your barn and start tearing things up, set fire to it, or if I go into your home, if you shoot me when I'm in your home, probably not a big deal. If you shoot me because I'm tearing up your barn or destroying your crops, he's gonna take you to jail. Would that be right, Sheriff?
There is a different standard on occupied structures.
Yes.
We're not talking about shooting anybody. We're just
We're
talking
talking about different standards for occupied structures.
If you're threatened in your barn, you can shoot somebody.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is property damage or something like that. Yes, if they threaten you in your cornfield. I'm just saying, if I come in and I'm in your house, there's a different standard that the law would look at you protecting that property than they would if you walk out to your barn or your cornfield.
So safety doesn't apply if you're not in your home.
That is what I said.
Kenny Olson, Des Moines County resident and director of the Des Moines County Energy District. Setbacks are meant to protect people where they live and work today, not hypothetical structures that might never be built. And if we base setbacks on property lines, every open lot in the county becomes a veto against a farmer who wants a wind turbine or a solar field. That's not a balance, that's a ban. Other Iowa counties successfully manage this by fairly using occupied buildings as the standard. That's an approach that works at a lot of other places. So there's my input on that.
Yes.
Melody Patton. Many Iowa counties are now switching to property lines because of issues that have arisen over the last couple of years. So I believe that if you look at other Iowa counties, many of them do use property lines.
Des Moines County is the 16th
Name?
Rose Fisher, sorry. Des Moines County is the 16th most populous county in the state. There's a lot of residences and farmsteads in Des Moines County. And it may be that there's just not a safe place for a solar field.
Not to interrupt you, Jim. What we're trying to do is set setbacks that accomplish to put a standard of safety over a residence or a community building or any of those things, and have it far enough away that is safe. For anything else, for a field, for a shed or something like that, we want general liability coverage to cover any property damage. But not, you know, the people that own that land, they have property rights to acquire, use, dispose of property as they wish. That's one of the basic rights of the United States.
Should I not have that same right?
If you want to build something on your property, that's fine. Nobody's saying you can't do that. There's no zoning in Des Moines County. The reason we don't have zoning is because nobody wanted it.
Rose Fisher. So I guess to help me understand then, and I'm all for property rights. I think if a farmer wants a turbine on his land or a solar array on his land, that's great. He should have one. It's his land and he should be able to do whatever he wants with it. But I also have my own land and I should be able to do whatever I want with it. So let them have their turbine or their solar array, but don't take my rights away. I should be safe on all of my property. I should not have to give up basically an easement without my consent for them to take away my safety on my own property.
Melanie Patton, so you're saying that it should be based on a dwelling, then I guess I'm unclear as to why we're giving 300 feet to the boundary of a public conservation area. It's not to a building, it's not to a dwelling, but yet we're giving 300 feet from the boundary line, which is the property line of that conservation area. So we are affording that conservation area where people are recreating, possibly camping, whatever the case might be, but we're not giving that same 300 feet to a property where people spend their time gardening, farming, having a picnic with their family, maybe they have a pond. So I guess I'm a little bit unclear when you went on about the dwelling. That's not happening on a public conservation area that we're giving them 300 feet.
I don't know about the conservation area, but what I guess what I'm hearing is when we got the initial requests, I think the issue of safety has been distorted. I don't think you have to be so far away from somebody to be safe. I think we want to set, distances from homes that are different, that essentially preclude any accident, catastrophe, or whatever from reaching that home. And there would be a very small incident of those things happening. It's a different standard for property. But the individuals that want to use that, they are entitled to the use of their property as they see fit, as long as they are not creating a safety hazard, and that's what setbacks are for. And I think I don't think by saying that I'm not safe on the rest of my property, I don't think that's true at all.
Rose Fisher. So I'm gonna move to wind a little bit because that's where we had the data. But, so if we had hard facts and data that a turbine, in this case, threw debris over 3,000 feet, I mean, we've given you cold, hard data of what disasters could do. I don't know as much about solar. You guys kind of threw this curve in there, but they do leach. I mean, they have issues of their own.
Okay, let's move on a little bit here. There's too many questions on why. We're here to try to get something done. These questions can be asked later when we decide what we're gonna do.
I was gonna keep moving.
Yeah, we'll never get through it.
Did you have any adjustments you wanna make to the table on setbacks, or are you comfortable with what's listed in here?
So,
Did you have something?
Is that, and we talked about that a little bit earlier this week, or last week. I think we should add 300 feet for, I think we want to add existing ponds to that, or water, wetlands, anywhere where the waterfowl come in. We've talked about this specifically with solar. Yeah. And the rationale being is with the migrating, whether it's ducks or geese, I don't, this is, Chris, this is more your area than mine. From what I understand is as they migrate, if there's a large enough area of solar panels and they see it, and if it's close enough to where they land, they then go to land on the solar panels. So
Chris, is that a deal?
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with how that affects, but I have heard that certain birds will mistake a solar panel, a big solar array, for water because it looks flat, shiny. I think there are mechanisms they put, that's why they, rather than one single sheet, they have it divided up in little squares. But I'd also be surprised if 100 yards, 300 feet is going to change it. I mean, if you got a migrating species of anything that's coming in from whatever, 5,000, 10,000 feet up, mallards will fly at 30,000 feet sometimes. 300 feet between this that looks like a pond, this that looks like water, isn't, I don't think that's necessarily going to change a whole lot. But I mean, I'm all for setting things back from wetlands and sensitive ecological areas, just from a leaching perspective or any other environmental issues. But I guess I would ask, kind of regarding the discussion we just had, is a 150 foot, 200 foot, 300 foot setback from a non-participating boundary line, is that a deal breaker for a solar array? If it's 75 feet from a property boundary line to 300 feet, I think nobody come right out and said, hey, let's change this to 300 feet. They all started arguing about what the impact it was going to be. If we made that 300 feet, what's the impact? That would be my question from that side of things.
I truly don't know. The first time we had, the reason we're going through this is we had two ordinances. We had one for solar and one for wind. And so we're in the interest of whatever, to have it all in one place, that
and there's also the
talked about those setbacks at that time, and it would have been setbacks people were comfortable with, and there would have been people in the room on both sides at that time.
Yeah, and my thing was if you just made it 300 feet from a non-participating property line, that excludes having to put additional parameters in of it's 300 feet from a pond, it's 300 feet from a wetland, and then like what's the definition of a wetland and pond is an ephemeral stream. Like if you just say it's 300 feet from a non-participating boundary line, it's 300 feet, you're done.
Or you can say the same thing about 150 feet.
Sure, yeah. I mean, whatever that number is, I don't necessarily care what the number is. I was just thinking for simplicity's sake, that would eliminate having to put in different criteria in there. I definitely like simplicity when it comes to making rules.
Ultimately, the Jared Lassiter regional planning. So ultimately, the inclusion of a setback for conservation areas is meant to relate to the wildlife mitigation and monitoring, which has been expanded based on our work in Lee County, as well as through our previous work session discussing that topic. So I think part of what we want to do here is create some sense of flexibility in terms of what are the conservation entities, what do they say about habitat and specific characteristics of the area where a wind or solar farm is proposed, and what in that case is something, or the things that we should be concerned about, and what added protections may be necessary if it were to be developed in that area. So part of the concern about having rigid, specific setbacks for features, ponds, creeks, whatever, is it really true that that's going to be consistent in every instance, or should it be deferring to those specific the specifics of that site as evaluated by county conservation, DNR, Fish and Wildlife, etc.
So, but the problem with that rationale, Jared, is it's exactly backwards from our perspective. Because if you say 300 meters from the property line, and if developer Acme Solar Panels comes in and says, hey, this is what we have, we want to do it, but in this instance, we really need to go 250 meters from the line here. Can we get a variance within our permit process? And you look at it, and there's not going to be a significant impact. You can give them a waiver. Say, okay, yes, that'll work. The problem is if the opposite happens and they want to go 250 meters and it's going to significantly impact something, but we've already said 150 meters or feet, I'm sorry, military mind, right? But if we say 150 feet and it's 250 feet, there's something that causes a significant problem, we've already sold the farm. It's gone. It's too late. We can't do what needs to be done in order to protect the county, in order to protect the citizens. If we just go with that simple 300 feet from the property line, it's simple, it's understandable, it's clean, and if we remember at the very beginning of this, when we started the thought process of looking at the ordinance again, part of it was because some of the terms within the ordinance, we didn't know that there was anybody snooping around trying to put in any ordinance or, I'm sorry, not ordinance, any development of anything, any solar, any wind, anything, right? But we had a review done because you went to, it's not Liberty, what is it, Bill?
Mechanicsville. When I came back, I said I was concerned about setbacks, yeah.
Yep, you went to Mechanicsville and he came back, and so we had a review, and he's like, hey, there's a couple of things in your ordinance that are arbitrary, let's tighten it up. And if we say just 300 feet from the property line, that's as tight as we can get, that's tight. And if in the process of filing for the permit, they want to ask for a waiver for whatever reason, they can do that, and then it's still up to you guys to, you can have a decision at that point. But the problem is, if we say we're gonna go all the way down to 75 feet from, say, a power line, and I don't know, then they wanna go 100 feet from a power line, but that's gonna cause some problems. We've already given away, that we can't, you see what I'm saying?
75.
Yeah.
My take on this, and when we get this thing here done, much work have we done on it or anything?
Yeah.
Somebody comes in, if they can't go by this, the hell with the waivers.
Okay.
Now, it's getting to that point.
Okay.
Well, I don't think you want to do the waivers, Brian Carter, but I think you could give the company the right to go to the non-participating property owner and purchase the waiver to be closer.
From them.
That would allow both the property owner and the other side to say, I'm good with this, on whatever, no matter what dimension you're talking about.
I think they've already got that right, don't they, Trent?
It's
earlier, B1C.
Yeah.
There, I don't know that there's an outline for a waiver necessarily from the county. There's a waiver process from a property neighboring property.
No, when we get this done from us, I don't want a waiver.
Okay.
Angie.
Thank you. I've been trying to ask this question for a little while. And this isn't for you guys, this is actually for the lawyers, Trent. So if we, all right, say someone decides, all right, they've already got the solar panels within that distance, but my children, I want to build a house over here on this property. We can still do that, because this ordinance isn't gonna stop that, correct?
Correct.
All right, but if you do that and something happens,
Mhm.
okay, say it's a wind turbine, it's throwing ice, it tears up the house, or it's solar panels and it causes an issue, who's responsible for that damage? Because you have chose to go within that area.
That's a very specific, that's a very fact-specific question. But as a general rule, you can't move to a nuisance. So if there's a
That's what I was
nuisance
afraid
there
of.
and you build within the range of that nuisance,
Then you're responsible.
you're accepting that responsibility, yeah.
You can't what to a nuisance?
Can't move to a nuisance.
Oh, move.
So if they built there and something happened, nobody else is responsible. Shame on you, that's your fault, you were stupid enough to build
I
there.
mean, there's a lot of facts, and it's a super fact-specific question, so it's hard to answer that with a broad scenario, but as a general rule, the thought process is you can't move to a nuisance.
In terms of actual, Jared Lassiter, regional planning, in terms of damage as a result of an emergency event, we do clarify in the emergency response chapter that it needs that any damage on a non-participating property owner, property is the responsibility of the developer to clean that up. So if we're talking about actual damage from an emergency, that is already addressed here, wherever it may be on the non-participating property.
But it won't stand up in court.
Right, it gets to be this kind of wonky thing where a permit, if, as we work into the permitting process, and if we go with this renewal process, our permit will give some bite to that, and we'll have the decommissioning process. But again, that, especially if we're saying it's one permit, if the developer says, hey, we want to develop, 30 acres of solar panels for, I don't know, $10 million. I don't know what a solar panel costs. But, all of a sudden, that's, instead of doing 30 different permits, the problem is, that's just one big stick then, is what we have. And it gets really wonky. And how does, at the county, I'll tell you, our office, and you deal with this too, how often do you have to say, or your deputies have to say, that's a civil matter, we can't help you? I mean, that's a daily occurrence, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We do our best to keep both parties happy, but if it's not a criminal matter that we can't intervene in, then.
Yeah, so it kind of gets into, yes, ultimately, you're looking to go back to the court, and so that gives some bite, but we as a county don't have a mechanism to say, yep, there's $100,000 worth of damages here, yep, RDA is at fault, that we don't have that mechanism.
Can we'll be requiring insurance? Can there be can that be something we require, any damage that this installation does on non-participating property, whatever is covered, just say, it's covered, there's no argument that.
Yeah, I think we already have
We
that.
move, well, then this is a non-issue.
But that's for what's there now.
No,
Things in the future.
the way I understand it is whatever, once, that installation causes damage on that other side of that property line, whether it's something that had been there for a month, or if it's been there for 10 years, the responsibility for the liability for that would fall on the developer's insurance. At least that's, did I say that right?
I think so.
Mr. Tony, Charles Tomkinson, South Yarmouth. I don't understand why we're even having this conversation. We have thousands of acres that are signed up for the wind farms. And all of a sudden, you can't protect my property line from my house. I mean thousands of acres, that they could put it someplace else, not right next to my property line. The property line is the only sensible way to go. If we only had 5 acres to put all this stuff, I'd say we have a good argument. We'll just go encroach on other people's property. But we don't. We have thousands of acres that we could put it here, put it here, put it there. It's already signed up. There's gonna be no problems. Those people are not here. Those people were not in Danville when we had a packed room down there that you couldn't move. Because they had it in the evening when people that had jobs could show up and protest this thing. There's a lot of resistance to this. But I don't understand why we can't honor the property line. Why do we have to go up on this guy's house or this lady's house because you're such a special little spot? We're talking thousands of acres. That's my point on it. And I think it makes a lot of sense.
Rose Fisher. So Jared, does the ordinance state that the developer will reimburse the landowner even if they're inside or outside the safe setback, or what they say is a setback distance?
In terms of a damage
Yes.
event?
And then also, Tom, how do you put a monetary value on a life? What if it's a life that's lost?
Not to belittle that, the insurance companies do it all the time.
But how do you justify it?
I don't, I'll tell you what, I've thought about this.
I'll ask, can we, I'm sorry, Rose, just trying, I'll ask, can we move on from that question? And move on from I don't know, are you guys ready to move on from setbacks at this point and move on to the next one? I just, please don't answer that question.
No. Yeah.
I think we're gonna need more discussion on setback.
I think we'll have to come back to that at some point.
Come back to it.
Yes, okay.
It's gonna be part of the wind discussion too, so.
Yeah.
Right, and we're getting into the wind discussion, I think, is the reality, so. Okay. So if we moved on, I think Charlie moved us into height restrictions. So, and again, we're talking height restrictions for the solar, at 15 feet. Now, I didn't have any comments on that. So 15 feet would be, is that about what they have at SCC in their parking lot?
I couldn't tell you.
I don't know.
Aren't those on rooftops?
They're on, yeah, I think they're
Probably,
That's
they're on
probably
sort of
close to 14, 15 to 20
carport
feet.
type structures.
Yeah.
Right, right. So that's what that would be, about 15 feet like that.
Well, those don't move. So like Allison Moore. So like the ones in Louisa County, they lift, to get the best sun angle. So like the ones you're referring to don't lift up. Those are fixed on a carport.
Okay.
So they get taller as they.
Yeah, this is saying that the vertical tilt, the highest it can be is 15
I was just
feet.
trying to explain to him how the ones at SEC don't.
Or different, yeah. Okay, so do we have any comments on that? Okay, so design material, all components of the CSCC shall be built using industry standards and design specifications without the use of novel or experimental elements that have not previously been tested or routinely utilized in CES projects elsewhere.
This was added to all sections,
Yeah.
and this is really a reference to the turbines in Mechanicsville. Because there's only 2 turbines in that whole county.
Yeah.
And they were basically test turbines.
Yeah.
And so, where they were using kind of different materials, different styles, and so this is a statement that's put in every section to basically say you can't you can't be testing out some new technology. You have to use kind of what's the known and standard material.
So then we get into the maintenance soil. This I remember I wanted the soil test a little bit more often. And I still like the 3-year schedule. I know we talked about this a little bit, Zach. Where is that at?
Yeah, we talked about changing it to 9 years.
3, yeah, or 9. But somewhere we're sticking with that consistent 3-year review.
The purpose of that was the insurance and the bond has to be renewed every 3 years, so we wanted to make sure that timing would be on a cycle that matches with when those come about.
Did you
I have 2 questions. Melanie Patton. One is back to design materials. Who decides if they're using the industry standards? Like, is that the administrator that, as it's defined in here, the ordinance or the administrator of whoever gets the application? Who decides if they're using industry standards? And who decides because it just says they have not been previously tested and routinely utilized in CSES projects, and I know it's in the other sections as well, and I know we aren't talking about wind, but for example, if we go to a 700-foot turbine, is that been used somewhere else? And I don't know the terminology for solar, but who determines if it's the industry standard and if it's experimental?
So you're right, and we're gonna have to get that defined in the definitions, and part of that becomes, has it been used in a similar fashion?
Is there a nationwide standard? I was in the construction industry a long time, and there are all sorts of, nationwide standards for steel, for concrete, for electrical work that, that goes through and said, these are the standards that have to be followed, they're approved, and I don't know if
I think we're too far forward in the foxhole with this stuff as well.
And I think
reality.
defining previously tested and routinely utilized as well. So does that mean there's one somewhere in the States, or what does that mean?
Right, and when we come back around to definitions, that's gonna be that's a very good question, and that's a big one which we need to define, because
That way it's less subjective.
it's very right, that's very right for litigation. Again, and it goes back to, is it subjective? It is subjective. What is experimental? Do they have a farm that, quote unquote farm, where they have, 5 windmills or 5 solar panels, and they're in the middle of the country, and they're not in this kind of hybrid where we have this country, but it's really residential, right? And so that's a big difference, right? And so how do we define that? How do we look into what is experimental, what has been previously used? When you look at something and say, yes, we have all of these solar panels and they're out in the Mojave Desert and they're doing great, well, okay, but there's not a lot of people that live there, right? And so there's not birds flying through there, and there's not water things. You see them. So it's just a different question. So we do have to find that definition, but I think when we do that, when we go back through the definition section, especially because that'll hit all 3 different uses, because we have that in all 3, both in solar, in BES, and in wind. So we want to hit that definition.
Two you ladies held your hands up.
My second question, Melanie Patton, was about number 4 and the no less than once every 10 years. There's studies about the leaching and such like that, so even moving it to 9 years seems pretty extensive. Is there any reason why it couldn't be every 3 years?
And I did have a couple articles that talked about the minerals, the chemicals that can leak, and studies that show, over a couple of year period, even cadmium, which seems the most relevant, has leaked. It falls outside of what's acceptable. So it would seem important, rather than base it on an insurance timeline, that you actually require more frequent testing. Why wait 3, 6, or 9 years to see that it's leached when it might be too late to do anything?
It also has consequences for groundwater, so if you detect it in the soil sooner, you may be able to have a solution so that it doesn't impact the groundwater.
Oh, that's something we talked a little bit about last week too, and I can follow up. So a lot of this section, we have an environmental engineering, I can say I'll call environmental engineering firm that we've done a lot of work with on cleanup of brownfield sites. And so he helped us kind of craft some of the language for this and identifying the types of materials that would leach and how often to test and how they would test about it. So I can reach out to him and better understand. I was thinking, I don't remember when we talked about it last week, because we talked about doing on a shorter cycle potentially.
Yeah.
And I said, I think he told me that something about the timeline of it may, over 3 years may not make a difference. It may need to be a longer period of time, but that's something I can look back with him too and check on. But
Well, and you were concerned about cost, so it could be, because you said for within the industry, but it could be that we could do spot testing. And if that spot testing shows something, then go back for a more thorough so there's ways that could probably be put into the process that would allow for more frequent tests, yet at the same time mitigate the cost. So if a spot test shows something, then we go back and, okay, it looks like we have, what was on cadmium?
Cadmium.
Looks like we've got some cadmium here, what's going on? And then we can go back and do a fuller test. So maybe we can do that spot test on a more frequent basis. And then if it looks like there's some there,
they find something, then they can do a full-blown test if they need to.
Yeah.
You're gonna reach out to the.
Yeah, we can, yeah, we had already talked a little bit about cleaning some of that up, so.
Marjorie Tomkinson, South Yarmouth. It's hard hearing back here, but I'm hearing about spot testing. Who does the spot testing? The company that puts the solar panels in? Or are you gonna have a company that doesn't have any association with that?
I would prefer an engineering, environmental engineering.
Okay.
I don't know that it states in here who it has to be, but usually it's gonna be a third-party company most likely that would do that. So I don't know,
I can put something like that in there.
we can clarify that too.
Take
Need to
it
read through
back
it.
there.
Okay, Melanie Patton. I guess too, this addresses kind of just routine. What about if there is some sort of damage too? So if there would be some sort of a catastrophe, is there testing required at a different rate or different level? And as far as the firm, I know in other ordinances that I've been a part of, it is specifically written in there that it has to be a neutral third party.
And we have that built in here in other places with it.
Yeah,
If that's
what I
not
was just
in
gonna say,
there,
if it's
we'll-
not in here on this section, we can clarify that it is definitely in there in other places, so.
Yeah.
So Rose Fisher, just a couple more comments in there. I think periodic inspections of the facilities itself need to be included. The information I gave you, it talks about spontaneous breakage of these things or storms. So once that seal is broken is when things can begin to leach out. And then kind of jumping ahead to 2C, if we're going to allow grazing of animals in that area, then I think it's really important that you inspect and soil test more frequently.
So, yeah, I think the grazing came in as a best practice, like an ecological best practice was why that came in there. I don't, and I'm not gonna pretend to know why that is. But that was a recommendation to have some grazing within there. But you're right, that it does necessitate more, more frequency, yeah.
Drew Lester, I could just attest to specifically, it was included there for the broader overall aim to ensure that the underlying soil is kept in a productive state over time and it could be usable after the solar farm is decommissioned. So it was recommended that we include that specifically because without specifically stating it here, it basically says you have to have certain vegetative plantings in there over time, but it doesn't allow specifically or it doesn't mention the use of the agrivoltaic. So this is just ensuring that would be an option as a means of keeping the soil productive long term.
I think Brian Carter, I think Zach was gonna ask the expert, I guess, as to what the proper time frame would be, but it seems to me if you're gonna go to a shorter time frame, you're already doing a bond renewal every 3 years. That would seem like a logical time frame to also do soil testing. I would also mention that 1 test per 100 seems a little light. Just when you think about, I think most solar arrays, I think they'd like to see around 1,000 acres minimum. It just seems like 10 test holes on 1,000 acres is a little thin, I guess, if you're looking for soil testing. But I mean, I don't know what they grid sample a field at, but it doesn't take that much to go out and grid sample stuff anymore. So just I think we need to let Zach look at an expert, talk to an expert and look at it further, but you're gonna go shorter, at least 1 every 3, because then you're leading
And
into.
I'll ask him about that. I know he gave me these suggestions, but I can follow up with it. Just
I'm not a chemist, so I don't have.
Christopher, North Public Health. I guess, Zach, as you're looking into this, I'm wondering is also about wells and well water as far as that. Is there a specific recommendation as far as how far, if we're talking about this leaching into the ground and groundwater, would we have concerns about people who end up doing wells in that area? Or leaching into these wells? Would there be a setback for those?
Yeah.
Good eye, that's good. I don't know much about the water underground.
Well, our environmental specialist
Yeah.
probably knows a lot more than I do, but I'm not sure since we've not come across this, I'm not sure that he would have that. I mean, I can do some research with DNR, but if Zach's reaching out to the environmental specialist, I think they would probably know more about this.
Yeah, I'm sure you will.
Melanie Patton, I believe too, this addresses while the solar array is being utilized, what about during decommissioning? I was looking through the decommissioning briefly to see if there was any place where it required soil testing, water testing, that kind of thing upon decommissioning, and I don't see that unless I missed it.
I think we're taking a lot of what we're applying and expanding our decommissioning altogether. I think that was, when we created these way back when, I don't think decommissioning was a thought. We were just trying to get something on the books. I think your point is valid. I think we talked about the same thing with wind. I think we'll need to beef it up for solar also. And yeah, if you're decommissioning, why would you not require soil testing during that to make sure it's returning to the proper conditions?
So for permitting and then decommissioning, so we're talking about in the permitting process, having this initial assessment of the land done for purposes of decommissioning, and then in the decommissioning process, the land has to be returned back to the original state. So there is already some, so it is addressed in that regards. So if there's any.
Yeah, to say soil, descriptions of soil characteristics, documentation of CSR,
Yeah.
those kinds of things, but I think
Yeah.
have requiring that same testing be done.
As far as requiring the same testing for the
surface level soil samples.
for any contaminants.
Right.
So we want to add contaminant language to decommissioning. That's we could do that.
Yeah, we can look at that. I think it's somewhat outlined already, but maybe it needs to have a little more specifics to it.
we had included some additional language related to the CSR and decommissioning, which would apply to any type of the solar or wind, but yeah. Maybe some slight, yeah.
Yes.
Rose Fisher, just something else I wanted to point out, when it talks about the baseline soil sample, it says the results should be provided to the Board of Supervisors prior to approval. But then later when it talks about having another sample, it just says that the operator should notify the board their plan of action if anything was out of line. Well, shouldn't the Board of Supervisors also get those test results?
Where are you referencing?
5A.
It also doesn't talk about what happens if that, in A, if that takes place, what's the follow-up? It just talks about the plan specifies the efforts to be taken. So is there a follow-up to that to make sure it was done and a retesting?
You could probably use some additional detail. Sorry, I'm still kind of reading. It does say they need to notify the Board of Supervisors.
It doesn't say they provide the
Provide an
Action plan to address the issue. This is why it shall specify efforts undertake. They could probably have some additional detail there.
That was certainly the intent, so if we could certainly clean that language up just to make it clear.
Lighting refraction, any lighting that is, so moving on to screening. All right, then we got lighting and refraction, anything?
I have a couple questions on screening.
Go ahead.
Melanie Patton, what does if deemed necessary mean?
This is.
And then also on line 2, what is SFES? Is that a typo or is
Yeah,
that?
I apologize, that's what it used to be in the old.
So it's CSES,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
I wondered that.
But this is why I agree that when we initially put this in there was some, I don't think it was clear whether we wanted to actually specifically require screening in every instance, just because it could be tricky to determine exactly what the length of alongside solar panels that would need to be covered by that. And so this was just to put it as a precaution if there was an incident, a particular instance where that was deemed necessary. But I agree now that does need to be, either we have it in there under for specific instances or always, or we just take it out, because I think that does need to be specified. So that's one where we want guidance from the board as to whether having this screening should even be considered as a requirement at all.
I think we take out that first clause of if deemed necessary. Just take that out.
It also says close proximity, so what does that mean?
The Board of Supervisors may require that a row of vegetation screening be planted outside the perimeter of a CSES in instances where one or more homes or civic buildings on non-participating properties is located in close proximity. And I think we want to keep that in there. Because the screening is a big thing. I mean, the main kind of pollutant when you talk about, and not to go back to standoff, but the main pollutant that's coming into the neighbors that's a concern is reflections, right? And this screening is specifically what prevents that. So you say you plant some trees that grow up, I don't know, evergreens or something. I'm not a botanist, but that. So they can still, but they grow straight up. So the solar panels still get light because but it stops the reflection from going into the neighbor's windows. I think that's a win-win. So that gives some authority to you guys to say, hey, yeah, you need to have some screening here. Or if you have it on a roadside, say, hey, this way, and there's already language that says it's not allowed to reflect into some of these things. So there's already some other language that protects from that. But this is a good way, screening is a good mitigator in these instances. I think it's good to keep it in there.
So what does close proximity mean then? Who determines that?
Well, if we do keep this, we would need to specify what that is.
I do have another question.
Yeah.
Melanie Patton. So you mentioned, Trent, that if it's not to glare into somebody's windows, I don't believe we have a complaint resolution section in the ordinance. Is that correct? So if it is glaring in somebody's windows, what's the protocol?
We added.
Oh, we
Yeah,
did?
yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, we added that the developer will have a contact.
Yeah, that's Article 9, Communications and Enforcement.
Okay, thank you. Allison Moore. Could we also add cemeteries? Because we know it's not just like, I mean, it's also because it's an eyesore. I mean, everybody knows that, and that's part of why they put these hedges around them. They're ugly. So, I mean, I think we should add cemeteries to that language too.
But we could just have a screening around all of them. I mean, that's easy too. It's not cost prohibitive at all, I don't think.
Depending on the total acreage we have here, that might.
So I went to the Orion Solar meeting last Tuesday in Loiza County, and that company, they do that screening. I mean, that's part of their, so I mean, I don't think it's a big deal to require it. They knew how many miles of screenage it was gonna be. They showed the plan of how the hedges would grow over the years and what, you know, how tall they could get and everything.
And that's is it 5,000 acres? Something like that.
It was 4,000.
So
I don't think it's out of line to require screening.
Well, I don't have a problem with requiring it, I don't think it's
Maybe just say that it could be waived if, by the neighboring owners.
Planted outside the perimeter of the CSAS, and then we don't have to worry about proximity, and then that's a simple button. Okay. All right, lighting and reflection, installed premises, CSAS shall be shielded and downcast to the extent that the light does not protect directly onto any adjoining properties. Exceptions shall be made only when such lighting is necessary to comply with requirements of the Federal Aviation Administration or any state. CSAS shall be designed, positioned in such manner as to prevent reflection glare. So in lighting, my big concern here with this that we don't have is, do we want to talk, do you need any lighting for the telescope at Big Hollow? That's a concern. Any special lighting requirements for that?
No.
No. Okay.
So, I mean, that'll be a case-by-case thing. If there's a proposal for a solar array or any sort of commercial energy system near Big Hollow, that'll definitely be a discussion that comes up, because the reason the observatory is at Big Hollow is due to the light pollution closer to town.
Right.
So we're gonna go put a bunch of lighting, whether it's on windmills or on solar arrays or on battery facility or whatever. We're gonna just have that discussion, how it's gonna affect the observatory. If at all.
Okay.
I don't necessarily think that that's something that you can put into the ordinance. I think just the setback requirement from a conservation area will cover some of that. And I don't know that solar arrays are going to have a lot of lighting. I wouldn't think that they would. It's largely when you get into like municipal lights is where you start getting light pollution, when it starts lighting up the horizon or the sky.
Mm-hmm.
Now, turbines, on the other hand, will be potentially an issue, because then that's going to be line of sight blockage for the telescopes. but it's not something we can discuss then.
Okay. So you're not worried about it here?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, I guess I don't know what solar facilities use for lighting, but I mean, I can't imagine it's a bunch. Light pollution is a significant issue, not just for our observatory complex, but it's gonna have an ecological issue as far as birds and insects that are migrating and things like that. There's no research into how light pollution affects that, but I guess I would need to know what the extent of lighting is going to be on a commercial energy system before I could weigh in on that.
So do we want to have just a 3 saying that lighting and reflection just shall be compliant with the environmental plan? What are we calling your plan? What's that language?
Wildlife mitigation and monitoring.
Okay. So,
So I was gonna suggest, I need to read the language a little bit more, but I think, yeah, to give Chris, he'll have that opportunity in the wildlife mitigation plan. So somehow we may need, I don't know if we need to, but we may need to make a connection with the lighting to that.
mitigation plan, yeah. I just think
I don't know if it has to be in there, but we need to maybe just check the language and see if there should be that connection.
Yeah, I think we should just do a G3, shall be compliant with the wildlife mitigation plan. And then that way that could be built in there. Because that's, I think, when we talk lighting, that's, the observatory is really my specific concern. Jim, we've got a hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Charles Thompson from South Yarmouth. I hate to go back, but the height restriction got by me when I was trying to hear everybody. I don't hear so good. But in 1A at the bottom, it said that the maximum height shall be increased, which is 15 feet, by 1 foot for every 2 feet at which the distance exceeds the minimum. So 300 feet for a non-participating individual. I could go back 500 feet and I could put up a 100-foot panel that would follow the sun in extreme case. Or I could go back 100 feet and put up a 50-foot plus the other 15 feet. I think we need to write that differently. I think we ought to put a maximum, stick right with that 15 feet, and I think that's too high. That would be the height restriction in C on number 1, and paragraph A. I think we're gonna have to, it seems like 1 foot for every 2 feet, and then it's unlimited. These are wide open, so I could go back 200 feet and put up 100 foot, 115 foot.
So
if I didn't like my neighbor.
So, I mean, that's
it
not.
has to be, that's from his dwelling, not from his property line. And
So-
then close the guy in.
So Charlie,
We're leaving ourselves wide open with that.
what you're proposing is we just get rid of that exception in A and just have that straight 15-foot height restriction?
I think we ought to leave it at 15 feet. I think that's too much.
Well, Jared Lasser, Regional Planning, so the specific reason we put that in there, in Lee County, we'd actually discussed that specifically with prospective solar developers, and also we got some outside expert guidance on this as well. And part of the issue with the 15-foot is that in the instance where you are using the agrivoltaics or those types of more intensive use around the solar panels, then to be able to, I forget the exact reason of it, but for practical purposes, it would need to be slightly higher than that to accommodate those operations around there. I think with just having the cows or whatever animals in the vicinity, it just makes it could, having it capped at 15 feet could be unfairly limit whether whether the agrivoltaic could be used there. So I guess I don't necessarily disagree with having an absolute maximum on there, but the idea that we stick at 15 feet, I think could be problematic. So it would have to be somewhere slightly higher, 20, 25 feet.
So what Jared's talking about when he's saying agrivoltaic is when they're using, so say they have a field, so say a farmer has a pasture, and instead of planting a tree for shade, they're putting up a 30-foot solar array. So instead of using a tree, they have a solar panel. I think the difference though is if that's a single panel, is that fit within our definition, or is that a
It still have to
smaller?
be done at a certain scale to be under the regulation here.
Yeah, is that under the regulation, I think is what I'm talking
They
about.
are testing where they're putting these though over, crops and things like that too, so.
Just to add some clarification, they are actually doing the pilot program for this up at Iowa State right now. They're putting panels between 20 and 25 feet in order to do exactly what these gentlemen are talking about. And they're doing tours once a month for the rest of the year. If anyone would like to go out there and see those, they're having very positive results.
So I would kind of concur with what Jared was saying, that there probably should be a maximum on here at some point, but, and not to like you, I don't think it should be completely open-ended,
Well,
but.
exactly. That might be your intent over there, but that's not what it reads.
No, I agree, I agree, it doesn't read that way,
You
yeah, I
might
agree.
intent to do something, but that's not how it reads at all.
No, I agree.
Did you understand what he said about what they're doing up to Iowa State right now with them?
Yeah.
I would suggest anybody interested in that, go up there and take a look, tour that. I think that might be something I'll do.
I mean, we can put just a quick at the tail end, in no event, no higher than, say, 30 feet. If they're talking.
And we could even specify for purposes of agrivoltaics, if that's what instances we need it to be higher than 15.
I mean, we can put a top on that very easily.
What do you think, Tom?
Yeah.
30 feet?
I don't know if I'd go any higher than what you said you're doing a 25 foot now.
They're testing between 20 and 25 feet currently, and up at.
I wouldn't go over what you're testing then
Say
at this
again?
time. That's my opinion, I don't know about anybody else's, but.
I'm having a hard time understanding, why do they have to get higher than 15 feet, so the cows can go underneath them? I'm not following this very well.
Or just the height of the plantings, or
There's different situations, there's, like he's saying, they're testing it so you can still plant your crops and the solar panels would be above your crops.
But then you're cutting off the sun.
Photosynthesis.
We cut down trees
What are
to
you
get
talking
more
about?
They've got some pretty smart people up there that are taking care of it. I think that they know
There's
what
all
they're
kinds
doing.
of testing, but
Water
there's,
hemp would do good.
but
Yeah.
there's other testing too. I was just at a conference for redevelopment of like,
You're not.
hazardous materials.
I'm sorry,
What?
you're not making sense.
You're gonna have
If
to
you
let,
look
you're
at
gonna have to let them
You gotta
talk.
let them talk.
You gotta let them. No, I'm just, they just happen to have, a separate conference next door that had, it was at all agrivoltaics, and I mean, they have all kinds of different technologies on these solar panels in different situations that they're using and testing, and, pretty fascinating things where they're covering crops, they're using them, to help shade for, their livestock and rotating throughout the day. And there's all kinds of different ways they're using it in agriculture, and so I don't know much about it, I just saw a few things, and I think that's what we're trying to, if people wanna, if somebody's gonna try and use that technology, we wanna have some limiting requirements, but not completely restrict those types of things.
Get some pygmy goats to put out there to keep.
I've never met a cow or a bull that couldn't get underneath something 6 foot tall. So 15 feet is way plenty for anything. And I think we ought to lock out there.
Okay, so we've talked about height restrictions. Now we're back to noise volume. So I have done research. This was the fun part of my weekend here. I've talked to several people about this. This is not my area of expertise. When you look, there's a lot of information on this in different areas. It seems to me that when you talk about decibels, so there's, they measure things in decibels. So then you have decibels and frequencies. So say if you have something at 50 decibels at a high frequency, it's not going to travel very far. If you have something at 50 decibels at a really low frequency, it's going to travel really far. So, but decibels is what we can easily measure. So that's what we have to use, and that's what we're using. Now, one of the things that I went to, because there's a lot out there on industrial stuff. So yeah, when you get to 70 decibels, you need to start wearing earplugs. 80 decibels, you're really getting at risk of like hearing damage and stuff, right? Well, we're not near that. We're not talking near that. But one of the things I looked at, so the Brits have a thing called Hollyland that does kind of like small scale productions and stuff. So the way they looked at it as sound technicians was a little bit different, but I think it's very telling because we're really talking about, again, people living in the area. What's it like for people that are, how does it affect residents, right? So they have a scale where they talk about annoyance factor. So they're saying at 40 decibels, you're getting into this annoying and irritating speech and or masking speech. So when you get noise that's 40 decibels to about 70 decibels, it's in that annoying range. So, and they're saying here, that moderate snoring is like 40 decibels. 30 decibels would be like a whisper, 50 decibels is normal conversation. 60 decibels, like a busy street or an alarm clock. So what we have in the ordinance written down is 55 decibels. So somewhere between an alarm clock or normal conversation as kind of a nonstop baseline noise. So I think we need to make that lower. I think it should go down to about 45. And if we look at, I went to another one here, just, this one here is just using, smartphones, but they took sound levels from the national noise, sound level meter. And they're kind of similar. Again, I'm old, so I got to use my bifocals. So at 50, that's like a large electrical transformer at 100 feet. At 40, that's a quiet urban area. And then at 20 decibels, that's a quiet countryside. So I think from that perspective, we're taking the countryside, and at 45, we're already taking it from the decibel level of the countryside, and that's already moving it up to a little bit louder than the normal urban setting. But I think 55 is too high.
I want to clarify one thing, just make sure we're on the same page. And I'm not a noise expert by any means.
Yeah.
But we do clarify too that this is weighted decibels as opposed to normal decibels, and I wanna make sure, I guess what you're referring to is weighted decibel, not normal
The
decibel.
DBA.
Yeah,
No, I've not separated that out.
so I think there's because the weighted decibel is the raw measure of sound as human perception.
Mhm.
So that's the number we're talking about, where that is not what a normal decibel is. So I just wanna make sure we're talking about the same thing.
And that was specifically taken from guidance from best practices and other ordinances, and this does seem to be pretty consistent that somewhere within the range of 50 to 60 A-weighted decibels is the industry standard for that, so.
Well, this is a DBA right here, when you get into the noise.
And that's fine, I just
system.
wanna make sure we're talking about the same
Yeah,
thing.
so we're talking about a DBA, if that's
Yep,
the.
yep.
Yep, so that's, so when you get into DBAs again, so DBAs, quiet countryside is 20 DBA. When you get into, and like right now, you can hear, we're in an urban environment, and you can hear the trucks outside, you can hear all of that. That doubles from 20 decibels to 40 decibels. A large electrical transformer, 50 decibels, and then if you get up to 80, it's, you know. So, or no, that's 80, yeah, 80 is like jackhammer, is that what it says? Yeah, so that's getting pretty crazy. But I think that as we go to 45, we're going from a rural environment to louder than an urban environment already. If we go to 55, and we're significantly changing that environment already. So 45 is a change of that environment, but it's just, I think that's, again, we're trying to allow one person to use their property in the way that they want to without disturbing the next person too much. I mean, and you have neighbors, and we get into this, one neighbor's playing their music too loud, and officers get called, deputies have to go out, and it goes back and forth, and you can play your music loud enough, but if it's too loud, it's too loud, right? And there's rules against that. So I think 45, then we need to move that down to 45. I think that's pretty simple there. And then also, I know you have some additional language, and where'd that language come from? Yeah.
I was doing some research on this here in noise level too.
Yeah.
And this new blade they've got out's got a curvature in it.
Mm-hmm.
And it reduces that noise level from up there where it's 55 down to between 40 and 45. Kids, you got,
40 and
what's
even
that?
so, 40 and 45 is very restrictive in terms of standard wind development. Now we're talking about solar. I don't know about solar, so I won't comment on solar. But if the solar restriction is going to be what we apply to wind, 40 is incredibly low. 45 is very conservative. 50 is at the low range of what is considered an industry standard. Trent was giving some good examples. Another one that we commonly use is the sound of your air conditioner running or your fridge running when you're in your home. You'll hear those. You won't hear the noise of the wind turbine. So if 55 is too high and we want to decrease it, that's fine. 45 is very low. I would think 50 would be on the low end of the industry standard. Hopefully a good compromise.
What's the distance of people, I mean, what distance does it take to keep it under 45?
It's a really good question. I'm also not a noise expert. There are people who work on this, like that's their entire career, so I won't answer that directly, but I believe in the ordinance right now it's measured from occupied dwellings, so we would be looking at residences.
The one thing that, and Trent hit on it, is the noise and the impact on people. This is one of, I mean, there's a lot of opinions, but this is one of the biggest hangups for me personally, is when people live in that setting, I don't think that you should have to sit on your front porch and hear the sound of a refrigerator running. And for me, that's where we start getting into the rights of people to enjoy their property and use their property, but also the impact of other people to also do the same. To have a constant sound of a machine running, to me, the noise is going to have one of the biggest impacts on people peacefully enjoying their own property. I mean, we get used to some things. We hear grain dryers running, but that's not constant. Those things are intermittent, and you can handle those kinds of things. You can handle a truck going down the road. You can handle that, but the constant noise to always interfere with the peaceful enjoyment of your own property, I think that would really impact somebody's life. Just my opinion, and our response to noise issues, we're pretty restricted based on based on the way the laws are. There has to be an intent or some intent behind it. But in this, we're writing an ordinance that it's going to limit their ability to enjoy their property on some level.
How many dBAs is refrigerator, somebody said?
I think it's like 45.
It's between 50 and 55.
A refrigerator.
Melanie Patton, I think this also takes us back to the, where we measure the setback from. So you're saying, as the sheriff mentioned, is on your front porch, that's from your dwelling, but what if you have a pond and you're out fishing? So then now we have the refrigerator bias while we're fishing, interfering with the sound of the birds. And so again, I think it comes back to, are we measuring that at the property line, or are we measuring that at the dwelling?
Well, and that goes to that, and that's what I asked, because I know I've got what was sent out on, well, I've got an earlier draft that was, I don't know the date, I don't have this one dated, but you had some changes that were made, and I don't know.
Exceeded during short-term events such as utility outages and storms.
Yeah, so tell us what those changes are, where they came from, and why they were added.
Well, it would specifically, that would allow an exception in the event of a short-term event such as utility outage and severe storms, which your guidance was that needs to be clarified, that's specifically for those outages and storms, that they're not something that is just occurring on a regular basis, and that could be that. But the intent there is just there will be unavoidable situations very infrequently due to an outage or a severe storm that there could be additional noise, but it's basically only allowed in those unique exceptions that would occur infrequently.
But where did that change come from?
That was based. That was just had some concerns from the development side that was that if literally enforced, that it could be no higher than 55 or whatever, then the intent is that is under normal circumstances, but that there needs to be a reasonable accommodation for those rare exceptions. That when they do their noise study in advance of obtaining a permit to develop, then that they'll base that off of the ordinary conditions day to day.
So you're telling me then that the noise level, as far as the setback, what's the noise level to be on what that study you did there?
So what he's saying is he got feedback from the company.
I'm not sure if it was the company or was it
A company, I don't know, and made changes to the document before we went through it. So I don't have the most recent language in my ordinance here. But there's some language that he has in his document about modification, or, so what's that last sentence again you put in there?
This amount may be exceeded during short-term events such as utility outages or severe storms.
Okay.
So if we adjust that language about short-term events to make it clear that this is an exceptional, rare, brief occurrence, as opposed to that more broad language, you said that could be helpful.
So I don't know if we need that language at all. I don't think we need to put an exception in there unless we lower the decibels. I mean, if we lower the decibel rating so that we don't have people having to put up with this high frequency or higher level of noise all the time, like Kevin's talking about, then we can maybe have something in there that's giving an exception for extreme event, but I don't think we want to say, hey, we can have this be loud all the time, and then at the same time give an exception, an open-ended exception or an exception for extreme events. I mean, I'm okay with an exception. It makes sense to say, hey, look, if there's a thunderstorm going on, it's going to be loud, because that makes sense, right? But it's that consistent sound is going to be problematic.
But on that road, to the subject, is this something I can go to a computer and ask Google to show me what 50 decibels or something sounds like? This is an interesting conversation.
The answer, yes and no. The answer is yes, but it's all over the map. And part of the reason why it's all over the map, and this is like we were talking a little bit on Friday or yesterday. Part of the reason it's all over the map is a decibel isn't exactly, a decibel is a decibel, right? It's how loud it is in the aggregate. But it does matter the frequency. So we've all heard somebody, and part of the concern, especially with these, and especially with the BESs where you're talking about this high frequency sound, we've all heard somebody walk up to the school, well, maybe not all of us, someone's maybe too young, but somebody walk up to the chalkboard with their fingernails and just run them down the chalkboard at school. And you almost, just your skin stands up just thinking about it, right? Well, that at 55 decibels is one thing versus, you know, this one of the great tenors singing at 55 decibels, or but you see what I'm saying. You know, some really good singer singing at 55 decibels is something different.
But I guess that doesn't exactly clear it up for me. There should be, if you can't measure it according to what the sound is, how do you enforce it? I mean, there's got to be some way that you go
it's a volume.
To this place 1,000 foot away that said this is 50 decibels, this is 60 decibels, this is 52 and a half decibels.
Yeah. There's decibel meters, yes.
Yes, for about $20 off Amazon.
Yeah, they're decibel meters, and you can get them and we can use them, and you can put a decibel meter in the room and you can turn it on and it'll say how loud the room is.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's just, in other words, I realize that scraping your fingernails on a blackboard is an unpleasant sound, but I think this is just referring to the level of the sound.
Yes.
And that can be measured.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
You haven't heard my grandson scream yet. You don't know what a decibel is until you hear him scream. I want that.
Yeah. Kenny Olson, I would just like to also make the point that decibels are logarithmic, they're not linear. So there's a big, the jump from 45 decibels to 55 isn't like 20%. 55 decibels is about twice as loud as 45 decibels. So whenever we're talking about increasing or decreasing the level that we're going to require here, just keep that in mind. It's not on a linear scale.
Okay.
Melanie Patton, a couple of questions is how, I guess I'm having a hard time understanding how utility outage and a severe storm would make them louder, because during a storm, you're obviously gonna have the sounds of the storm, which is gonna be louder, but if there's a utility outage, why would there be more noise?
I don't know.
Can you wanna explain that to me?
Somebody, maybe that doesn't turn any faster, I don't think.
If there's a utility outage.
I mean, we're talking solar right now. How would a solar array make more noise during a thunderstorm?
The way I understood it was related to just general electrical disturbances caused by storm, but I have not.
I was just curious. My other comment too is that in the Henry County ordinance, we divided out things a lot further than just specific to DBA. So it talks about, infrasound, low frequency noise, periods. So we actually divided out day and night. It got a lot more specific. We're currently working on solar right now, so I don't have the specifics on that, but on wind. And then there was, the Institute of Noise was consulted with what their baselines are and that kind of thing. So I think this section needs to be elaborated on more, perhaps.
Rose Fisher, I just wanted to question about the industry standards. They don't seem to change. And if you look at a pro-wind or pro-solar magazine, they'll say 55. If you look at something that's more conservative, and I'm not gonna say anti, I'm just gonna say safer practices, then it's 35 or 40. So an industry standard that came into effect 30 or 40 years ago when wind turbines, or I don't even know if we had solar then, but if in the case of turbines, if they were 250 feet tall back then, and now they could be as tall as 750, you would think that that decibel would be greater. So I'm just saying the industry standards means it's pretty subjective. Whose industry?
Well, and ultimately, I think part of the reality, or can I go ahead, Jim?
No, I just seen 4 hands go up all at once, I said, wow. I seen 1, 2, 3, and 4.
All right.
Let's take him first, okay?
For the counties in Iowa who are successful with wind, the lowest DBA that they have is 50.
It's 50.
Allison Moore. So I just want to make sure I understand. B1B would negate H if I choose to build something closer to the solar array, even if it's on my own property. Does that just wipe out H? Or would I still have the ability to say, like, hey, this is...
And I apologize, which page are you on?
So I'm on page 14, the noise volume. I'm wondering if the solar array is in place and I decide to build a property to build a building on the corner of my property, that noise volume could be exceeded and that's just my own problem, right? Because of B1B on page 11?
The page one.
Yeah, anytime it specifically references an occupied dwelling or civic building, that would be at the time of the development or expansion of a solar farm.
So I couldn't say like, hey, this measures 65, and it's just like, well, that's too bad because you chose to build here.
Well,
Is that right?
Yeah, and that's part of why I'm saying it should go down, because it is saying occupied dwelling. I mean, and this could be it, when we talk about sound, I mean, it could be something, because this language goes through all three. It was identical.
Yeah.
So, and it does, and frankly, it doesn't matter if we're talking about wind, solar, or BES, if you have that same sound pollution is what it is. So, we could table this section if you want and come back to it at a later date, but 55 is high, and it's just high. And part of the reality we have when we talk about industry standard, new standard, old standard, all of that, I think the reality we have is, again, it goes back to, are we looking at a solar array in the Mojave Desert, or are we looking at a solar array in and amongst residential areas? And here in Des Moines County, we're looking at a solar array in and amongst residential areas because they're all partially residential areas at some degree. So that's why when we say, what is the industry standard? Well, what's the industry standard next to somebody's house? So yeah, we want to look at that, I think, unless you guys have something different to say.
Melanie?
Melanie Patton. I brought up complaint resolution earlier. I just did glance. I see Rose has the section that was added that I don't have. My concern is too, again, on complaint resolution, is it doesn't specifically address individual complaints. So if there is a noise complaint, no matter what the installation is, solar, wind, whatever, is there any sort of there is a process, but what happens? So if I have a solar array next to me and I'm getting 60 dBA, every day, what's the process? What's the mitigation of that?
Well, I think that needs to go through the health department specifically. And I don't know if Krista's still here. Are you back here?
I'm back here.
I mean, you've already got Greg, and I know I've already talked to him, and he said talk to his boss, but he already kind of does some things along those lines. But I think when we're talking about these, we're gonna have to go through your guys' office, and we'll have to work with them to see what that'll be. But whether it's whatever group we go through, there's gonna have to be, we're gonna have to work a contract out with them. There's gonna have to be a way that they're reimbursed and a model for that. But these are health questions, right?
Yeah, I mean, it would have to go through the Board of Health, obviously, and then you're right, it would have to be a subcontract.
Yeah.
There's some choice to do that.
Yeah, these windmills are they're not like fans we have on our car or in a house with just regular blades. They create lift like an airplane blade. They're completely designed different than what we're used to seeing. And they do create a tremendous amount of power. But as I go to New London and the smaller ones, I can, a fisherman over there was complaining to me that he heard the swish, 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 and he was almost a mile away at that little lake over there. And I thought, well, I don't hear so good, I'll check it out myself. Well, I could hear the swish, swish, and it was annoying. And also the other gentleman said is, actually the more speed you get, they try to get like a 20 RPM on the blade itself, and they've got to get 1800 RPM on the generator. That'll give us a 60 cycles, and everybody's happy, your computer don't burn up. Okay, with that being said, as we get the bigger blades to get that 20 RPM again, and go through those 4 gears, I mean, it's a marvel the way these blades can do the pitch and the yaw to maximize that RPM. And it is an engineering wonder. But they're not the blades that we hear. So the bigger the blade we have, the faster that tip's going to have to go. Pretty common sense. That it's going to be noisier. And like he said, we go from one level exponentially. The noise goes up, not one for one. And that was a good point you brought up over there. And I'm still worried about the blades. I think it's all fresh in our memory about the guy who was going to go down and see the Titanic, and his little capsule imploded on him. But the failure of that was from the carbon fiber to the metal on both ends. And that's how these blades are made. And they're made with a metal, that's where all the weight comes from, is the metal that hooks on to the rotor, I guess. I think everybody can follow that. And that's where all the weight in these blades come from. We hear about these big weights. The fiberglass blade itself really isn't that heavy. It's hollow also. A lot of people don't do that. They'll put foam or something in the other end to, just to fill up. But there was 3,800 blades that came off last year worldwide. 3,800. That's about 0.5%. So if we bring in 80 into Des Moines County, I figure at 0.5%, less than 3 years, we're gonna have a problem. And you say, well, can it happen to new ones? Has anybody's went to investigate in Nantucket? Nantucket Island has a big farm coming in with new ones, and we're still building some, and a blade came off. And where they break is where they meet that metal. And so when they do come apart, they're not as heavy. They don't just fall straight down. They can actually get airborne and take off, as the one in Nantucket did. And it actually washed up on shore, and pieces of it. That just happened last year. And they're still not allowed, that farm is still not allowed to produce electricity. And if we look at the tornado they had in Greenfield last year, I mean, if you look at those windmills just come apart, the blade just came apart. And they broke off, and some of them will fly, and the 1,800 feet setback, I don't think, it's my own personal opinion, I don't think that's safe. I think we're gonna have to do something like that. And the property line, like I say, thousands of acres are already signed up.
Okay, Charlie, this is
That's all I
Trent.
have to say.
This is Trent Englewood. Charlie, that's not the topic we're on today, though. We're talking about the solar right now.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, I thought we were gonna wind it down.
Okay. Well, we are.
I'm ready to go home.
It's getting closer to noon, so I think we are.
Okay.
Guys, I think with the noise volume, do you want us to go ahead and look at the Henry County sound and bring that in? They've already got one put together there that has detail sound in that. Want to put that in there? And
I have been over and stopped there myself.
Yeah.
And stood there, and that windmill, it's only 450 foot.
Yeah.
And it was going, might not been going fast enough. I didn't get any wind off of it, or I couldn't even hardly hear it run.
The one in New London?
Yeah, one in New London.
Yeah. So
I don't know, you're gonna have to, if we're higher up there, does that sound come down, or does the sound shoot out? Where's the sound come from?
I don't know.
UV soil, the taller turbines are generally perceived as being quieter because the sound is coming from higher up.
So it's
But
gonna
I think it's important to think less about the sound of the turbines and more about the limitations and where you're measuring the limitation. And then leave it to whatever technology and whatever developer it is to figure out how they will operate within the confine of the ordinance that you've set.
So do we want to look at the Henry County? Because if Henry County already has detailed sound and they've already done the research, we want to look at that.
Sure, we can look at it.
Yeah.
Okay. So then access and security fencing. I think what we have in here looks pretty good. Whenever located within 200 feet of a right-of-way, public access road. This is all safety things in here. I don't think we need any changes.
Yeah, this is something we added in Lee County based on, and this is maybe a question for Brian if he wants to keep it in there. It basically came from the engineer. And I can read it and we can talk to Brian about it, but basically the idea is when you're within a certain distance, 200 feet of the right of way, that any kind of fencing they may have, and I think we added this to every section, so if there's fencing, basically it has to have the ability to let the snow go through it, so you don't get these big drifts that get on the roadway. Yeah, basically we used in this again came from the engineer down in Lake County about the minimum porosity, which is how freely snow can move through it. So it's all about drifting, and that's something we can maybe talk to Brian about too if he wants to keep that, or if he has a different way to frame this, but that was the purpose behind it.
Allison Moore, I'm just wondering then about the screening, if that would affect it too. I think that's something we might want to think about too.
I'll contact the Lee County engineer. Sounds like he put some time into that.
He did, yeah, he did.
All right, and signs, I didn't have anything to change on the signs there. Okay. Then next week, citing BES.
We'll be here next week for another work session.
Oh, and do we want to put on 30-day extension?
We talked about that. We still got time. We can do that next week.
We can do that anytime before it expires.
Okay.
Yeah, we've talked about putting another 30 days on it.
Because we're moving along, we're making progress, but we're not gonna be able to get this done in time.
No,
Yep.
we understand that, so.
All right. We're done before noon.
That takes twice as long.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, yes.
Thanks for the input.
I think so, Colin could answer, hey Colin.
Sure.